Hello, my name is Leroy Blevins. Welcome to Mysteries and Histories. In this episode here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about who was behind the assassination of JFK. In this video, I'm going to talk about some stuff, and I'm going to show you some stuff that a lot of people don't know about or even talked about. But as everybody knows, in my research, I tell all and I show all. Okay. Last year, I wrote a book called Who Murdered JFK? Here it is. Okay. And I go into details and I show evidence of stuff like that and other evidence that nobody points out in the JFK assassination and why I make claim on who was behind the assassination. Now, before I tell you who was behind the assassination, I'm going to point out some facts, and keep in mind as we go along when I talk about this, I'm going to point out one thing, but keep in mind every time I point this out, it's going to be brought up again and again because, like I said, when we look at information, and the answer has always been in front of us all these years. It's always been there. Excuse me. It's always been there. But the pointed fact of it is, people overlook it because they're pushing this issue here, saying the United States government was behind the assassination. Lyndon B. Johnson behind the assassination. The Miles behind the assassination. Cuba was behind the assassination. Pointing out all this, and they're overlooking the pure facts, okay? Now, I don't overlook the pure facts. I mark everything down, and I put it on the scale, and I weigh it back and forth and find out what happened, okay? Now, what I'm going to do is, everybody knows that in my research, as I point out here, it was a military hit, okay? It was very well planned, okay? Everything was well planned. Even Oswald setting up the decoy rifle was well planned to make them think that the assassin ran down a stairwell. Okay, using a decoy rifle, just like the shots here. Now, if no shots came from shelter number 3, they had a gunman right here. They had a gunman here placed. They had a gunman here placed, gunman on rooftop placed, and a gunman on second floor of the county records building placed. Okay, they had the shooter, the assassin, the true assassin, and then they had the backup, and then they have backup after another backup. Now, if the gunman in shelter number 3 never fired a shot, then all these distraction shots would never have been taking place. Okay? And here's the reason why I say this. Because remember, after the 6th shot was fired from the second gunman on the side of the shelter, that's when we start seeing these distraction shots being taken. Like shot number 7, the curb shot. Okay? Then we have shots number 8 and 9, manhole cover. Shots 10 was the steps where 3 men were standing. Shots 11, 12, grass area. Shot number 13, the sign on a lamppost. See, these shots would have never been taken. These shots would have never been fired if these gunmen down here on the grassy knoll in shelter number 3, if they didn't take their shots, these distraction shots would never have been fired. But since they took their shots, the distraction shots had to come right after it. And as you see the lines of fire, how they fired it, that's to get the people to start running up the hillside so these 2 gunmen here can get lost. So again, there was another plan right there that these distraction shots take place so these gunmen can get away. Now, excuse me, my nose itches. It's been itching all day because of these allergies. So these gunmen got away as the crowd was running up the stairwell there beside the Pelagora and the picket fence area. So it was a well-planned assassination, okay? And the way they even planned up, which this is the route right here, okay? They had a gunman in the Texas School Book Depository, 2 gunmen here in the county records building, and one on the inside and one on the rooftop. Then you had 2 gunmen inside shelter number 3. They kept the gunman on the right side of JFK's limo because that's where JFK always rides, on the right side. So they had to keep the the assassins on the right side of the limo, okay, and not on the left side, because left side they would have either struck Jackie, JFK's wife, or Mrs. Conley, or somebody else. And with the crowd being over here, okay, line up, there's a lot more crowds here, and then all the crowds running this way. As you watch my cursor, they're running around this way. Any shots coming from the left will be impossible, okay. So the gunman and the assassin has to be on the right side of JFK's limo so they can keep that constant, clear view of JFK and Governor Conley, as I pointed out, because he was supposed to be assassinated too. But anyway, what we're going to do is we're going to go into a little bit of the story Okay. Now, Oswald, everybody knows Oswald moved to Russia, gave up his United States citizenship, went to Russia, married a Russian woman, and then after he got married and stuff like that, he came back to the United States. Okay. And they're traveling here and there, yeah, traveling here and there, here and there. Then turn around, Oswald takes pictures at the beginning in February of him with a rifle in his hand and, Russian papers, Russian newspapers and stuff like that. Even though Oswald claimed it wasn't him, but it's been verified by his wife. His wife did take them pictures and everything else. Okay. The assassination of JFK was planned for a long period of time. Okay. It wasn't just something that happened overnight. And then, all of a sudden, after this, they end up moving in with Ruth Paine and her family. And then, when in March of that year, Oswald ordered a Carcan rifle and a revolver. Now, remember, they was at the Paine's house at this time. Now, where did that revolver and all that stuff was hidden at? So it had been hidden inside of Ruth Paine's garage because all their stuff was in her garage at the time. Then Oswald tried to take a shot at General Walker, okay, and they came there, looked for Oswald, want to see if he had a rifle and all this other stuff, And then in May, Oswald moves to New Orleans, and right after that, Ruth Paine drives Marina and his Oswald's kids to New Orleans so they can live with Oswald. Now, Ruth Paine goes back to Texas. Now, Oswald and them stayed there until September. Okay, they stayed in New Orleans until September of 1963. Now, when they was there, Oswald wrote to the head of Fair Play for Cuba. Okay, he wrote to them, said he wants to open up an office in New Orleans. Well, he was denied. They didn't want to open up an office in New Orleans, and they didn't want to have nothing to do with Oswald because of what he done, going to Russia and, giving him citizenship and all the other stuff. But Oswald says, I'm going to anyway use your name and stuff, and I'm going to do it anyway without your permission. So him and his wife made up the flyers and the business cards and everything else, and they stayed, and he's handing out the pamphlets, getting all that trouble and everything else. Then in September, Ruth Paine goes back down into New Orleans, pick up Oswald's wife and kids, and takes them back to Texas. Oswald leaves New Orleans a couple days later, heads down to Mexico. Now, this is where this guy comes into play. There's two embassies that Oswald visit, and people got to understand this. Oswald visit two embassies when he was down in Mexico, but the funniest part about it, he visited them both at the same time, which people don't understand that. Now, a lot of information gets fumbled and everything else, but actually two people were seen at two different embassies at the same time, but Oswald actually didn't go to the Cuba embassy, okay, which let me get the image of the guy right here. It's in my book, and other images, which I'm going to point out that's in this book as well. Okay, this image right here. Okay, this image right here. Everybody knows this guy here claimed that it was Oswald being at the embassy for Cuba. Okay, well, at the same time, Oswald himself, this guy here portrayed himself as Oswald, so they could pull this off. Okay, so this guy claims he's Oswald and goes into Cuba embassy because what they had planned was blame Cuba for the assassination of JFK. They had the assassination laid out, but they want to put the finger on somebody because Cuba never came in to the story or even assassination until Oswald brought Cuba into it. Till Oswald started pushing for fair play. Fair play for Cuba. He pushes this. Okay, it's Oswald. Oswald was setting up Cuba. Okay, that's what Oswald was doing because when this guy here in my book, this guy here was at Cuba embassy, Oswald was over at the Russian embassy because he wanted to go back to Russia. Okay, but they denied him. So he ends up going back to Texas, moves back in with the Paines for a couple of days. Ruth Paine finds him a job at the Texas School Book Depository. Okay, now he goes to work there, and he gets him a place closer to work, which is a boarding room, okay, which everybody knows. However, during this whole time, let's think about this. During this whole time that Oswald and his wife and them was in New Orleans, here's Ruth Paine inside her garage, has Oswald's, his effects, his furniture, his clothing, and, everything that Oswald owned was in her garage. Now, she knew the cops was there looking for Oswald one time before he went to New Orleans because of General Walker, someone trying to take a shot at General Walker. So she didn't have no red flags come up whatsoever to look in her garage or look in her stuff and see if there was a rifle there that they was hunting for or any other guns. Because remember, at this point when Oswald went to New Orleans, he had 2 rifles in her garage and a revolver. Okay, this was all in her garage while he was in New Orleans. Then he comes back from New Orleans. Then he moves to Dallas, okay, from where they live at, where the Paines lived at. He went and moved into Dallas at a boarding room, which eventually, during that time, he brought the Carcana rifle and a revolver with him, which later on he hid that Carcana rifle in the Texas School Book Depository a longer time before he went back to Ruth Paine's house and pick up the rifle that he used in the assassination, as I point out in the book and as I point out in my other videos. But like I said, I go into more details in my book. But anyway, here we have Ruth Paine that speaks very well Russian, helps Oswald and his wife out, drives him here and there, and she ain't getting nothing in return. She's not getting nothing in return. And then she ends up finding him a job and everything else at the Texas School Book Depository. Okay, now as you've seen, we're setting up a plan here, because the point of fact of it is, when you look at this and you start figuring this out and these questions come to mind, these red flags start coming up and stuff like that. Well, why wasn't this asked, or why wasn't that asked? Even when you look over the reports and the documents stuff, to me, when it comes to an assassination, everybody's a suspect. Everybody's a suspect, no matter who it is. And there's thousands of questions that's in your mind, and you got to see if these people has the answers. Just like, did you know, they did ask Ruth Paine, did they know that the rifle was in there? And she says she didn't, okay? But anybody knows that back then, a woman gets curious. And a woman's going to start looking through somebody's stuff, especially when they're not around for months, okay? They're going to look through that stuff because they said, wait a minute, the cops were here looking for a rifle. I got their stuff in my garage, and they're right now sitting in New Orleans. They start thinking, and they're going to say, well, let me, I want to look a little bit. I want to investigate myself, because everybody's in that, when something's going on and something happened right that revolves around him, they want to try and do a little investigation as well. Okay, but she did not bother going in her garage whatsoever. She did not bother touching one thing in that garage or anything else. See, these are red flags that comes up. Why didn't she? Now, as I point out in my research and stuff like that, now we got Ruth Paine doing all this stuff for Oswald and stuff, and she speaks very well Russian. And Oswald went to Russia and migrated there for a little bit until he wanted to come back to the United States. He married a Russian woman. Okay, so now we got Russia right there. Now, as I point out about Mr. Zapruder. Now, when we look at this route here, okay, let's look at this route right here. Okay, this is a pretty good map. Okay, this route was shown 2 weeks or 3 weeks before the assassination. This is a proven fact, which gives people plenty of time to set up. Hey, it's going right past the Texas School Book Depository. Okay, well, these would be the best locations to have gunmen. Then we have Mr. Zapruder, who worked and had his company running from the 4th and 5th floor of the Dow Tex building, which Zapruder and his family actually migrated from Russia to the United States when Mr. Zapruder was 15 years old. Okay. Now, we look at all the cameras and all the images and all the pictures and all the people that was there. There was only one person out of thousands that actually was filming over here. Nobody else was filming on this side of the street. Nobody was taking images of this side of the street, because honestly, it would have been better having somebody take an image over here because they can actually get a close-up of JFK. If you're on this side, as you notice, all the pictures that shows from this side of the Elm Street shows Jackie Kennedy. Even right here shows Jackie Kennedy. But no pictures are taken here really showing two close-ups of JFK. So the cameras are staying away from mostly this side here. Okay. Only cameras we got now we go from thousands of cameras and movie camera stuff down to a few. And then we get to this location here. We have only 2 or 3 shooting here. Somebody shooting from way over here, which is the Bell film. And Bronson film shot from over here. You know. And then we have Mr. Zapruder all by himself right here. And he could film the whole assassination. Matter of fact, he filmed the whole assassination from start to finish. At the same time, he had 2 gunmen behind him firing his rifle. Then we have Mrs. Stutzman behind Mr. Zapruder covering his ears as these shots were occurring. Okay. Then we have Mr. Zapruder not only after he filmed the assassination, he goes on live TV, as you see right here, he goes on live TV and he tells a story, and they're trying to get the film developed. Okay. He was the first one that goes into that movie station. In that newsroom. He was the first one to give his report on what happened that day. He was the first one to get interview from on live TV was Mr. Zapruder. Now, in this interview, Mr. Zapruder says the assassin was behind him. Okay. Now, let's think about this for a minute. Now we have Mr. Zapruder with 2 assassins behind him. 2 shots being fired from behind him. He's filming the whole assassination. We got Mrs. Stutzman covering up his ears. He turns around and sells his film to Time magazine. Okay, he sells it to them. He takes money that he got from that film and gives it to Mrs. Stutzman. Why? Okay, he just bought this camera. It was a brand new camera. He only bought one camera. 2 weeks before the assassination, he bought the camera and 1 roll of film. 1 roll of film and a camera. On that roll, he recorded a little bit of his family, a little bit of Mrs. Stutzman, and the rest of the assassination, and that was it. He never picked up another camera. He never picked up no more film or nothing else. He never filmed nothing else, took no pictures or anything, no more. Just that one time, first time buying a camera, first time taking a film, and that was it. Okay? To me, the way it looked like, Mr. Zapruder was there to film the assassination and make sure the assassination was carried out. Mr. Zapruder then left fast, went to the newsroom trying to develop it to show on live TV that the assassination did take place. And when his interview and stuff, he said the assassin behind him, which basically he's telling them over live TV now, the assassination was taking place. The assassin behind him is the one that did the fatal headshot to JFK. And as you see here in this image, we see Mr. Zapruder. When he's doing his interview, he coughs. He goes, then he holds his hand up like this. Okay. He coughs first, looks down, then he holds his hand up like this as we watch this interview. Now, when usually somebody coughs, they cough with their hand up in front of their face first. But he coughs, and then he looks down, and then he holds his hand up like this, which is basically, what does this stand for? A Russian hammer. Now, not only Mr. Zapruder done that, but when he took Oswald into custody, as you see right here, what is Oswald doing? Okay, he's not showing him, say, hey, look, they got handcuffs on me, because he's got his fist balled up and the other hand just like this. Okay, it's not saying, hey, they got handcuffs on me. He's just letting them know because he sees all the news reporters there. He sees them taking pictures and everything else. He was giving up the Russian signal saying the job is done. The assassination went through. It's done. JFK, the job is done. There you go. JFK is dead. Okay. Now, not only Oswald did it once, but he did it again right here. As you see him walking out the doorway, his hand goes right up again. Okay, got that Russian symbol right there. A Russian hammer sticking right up. So now we have Mr. Zapruder, which migrated from Russia. He's there to film the assassination. Ruth Paine was behind it. to what I think it is. Okay, now this is a theory. Okay, so I'm not pointing fingers, but like I said, everybody's a suspect until proven innocent. Okay, we have Mr. Zapruder, maybe was there to film the assassination. Okay, he was maybe there to film the assassination to make sure the job was done, and then he was going to let them know that the assassination took place. Ruth Paine was probably helping him to get him that job at the Texas School Book Depository, and, you know, help try to get this done. Because even when I look at the gunman that was behind Mr. Zapruder, the tramps, they actually have these Russian face structures, look like they're Russian, and when you look at them, because remember, at that time of the assassination, we had a Cold War going on. We had Russian spies and Russian agents coming in and out of the United States all the time. Okay, and remember, JFK already talked to the Russian Prime Minister already. Okay, got that stuff resolved. Now, JFK's next step was to go into Cuba, because the day of assassination, which a lot of people won't give this information out, but I'm going to give this out anyway, because JFK had one of his people in Cuba at the time when he was assassinated, talking to Castro. Okay, and Castro says, you know, he liked JFK. You know, he was very interested in what JFK had to say and everything else. And he had the meeting. He says, yeah, we're going to set this up. I'll talk to JFK, you know, to Kennedy. He'll talk to Kennedy and stuff like that. So he was, one of JFK's aides was there talking to Castro, and they was getting everything signed up and stuff. That's when Castro heard the news himself that JFK was shot in Dallas. When Castro heard about that, he starts throwing stuff around his office because he got very upset because JFK was assassinated. What they was trying to do was stop JFK from talking to Cuba. Why? Because they was trying to stop JFK to talk to Castro in Cuba. I'll tell you the reason why. Because Russia had their nuclear subs and stuff there in Cuba. Okay. Now, we're looking at this now. Now, their bases was down there in Cuba. Russia's nuclear bases and stuff was down there in Cuba. That's why we had this Cold War going on. Okay. Oswald, they had it planned to me, which I'm going to show you here too before we go any further, that a lot of people don't know about, but I do, because I have the images and I have the footage and stuff like that. We always look at, and they always want to point out that Jack Ruby was at the police station when they brought Oswald in. Okay, because see, Oswald has, you know, Ruby has to have something to do with it because, you know, he was there. But I tell you, somebody else was at the police station as well. A lot of people don't notice, but I have the image in my book right here. As you see right here, over here, okay, there's an image of Mr. Zapruder at, he's the one next to it. It shows him with his hand to his face, okay, from the news interview. And then we have the side view of Mr. Zapruder. But we also could see Mr. Zapruder at the police station when he was bringing Oswald through. When it was, I don't know if this happened on Friday night or even Saturday, but Mr. Zapruder was at the police station. Okay, he could be seen in some of their films, which I have the image here in my book, Evidence of a Conspiracy. Now, to me, and the way the evidence look and how everybody's been acting and stuff like that, to me, I think the KGB was behind the assassination of JFK. And it's because there is a lot of evidence to prove this. Okay? And with the Cold War going on, this is why JFK's family, Jackie Kennedy and Robert Kennedy and stuff, wanted to do the cover-up and wanted to put the evidence away for 75 years because they don't want nobody to know that by the evidence of stuff that they're showing and that they have and stuff like that, shows that actually the people behind the assassination of JFK was Cuba. Because Cuba's the only one, not Cuba, excuse me, the KGB or Russia. They say Russia, but I say it's the KGB, okay, that took out JFK. Because Russia had their plants down there in Cuba. Okay, Oswald was going to use Cuba Okay, so so when they start doing their investigation and their research and stuff like that, they're going to think that Cuba was behind the assassination when actually it was Russia or the KGB behind the assassination, because the purest effective is they're trying to blame it on somebody else. After the assassination, you start seeing all this stuff coming up. Okay, if you look at the people that surrounds, every time you look at this JFK assassination, you follow this JFK assassination, everything surrounds Russia. Okay, the KGB and Russia, it all revolves around that. Ruth Paine speaks very well Russian. She helps them out. Oswald married a Russian woman. Oswald trying to go to the embassy of Russia to go back to Russia. Mr. Zapruder migrated from Russia. Okay, and they're all this stuff is going on, and Russia's always being brought up, but everybody's thrown that aside because they're going to say our government did cover up, which our government did do a cover up, because they didn't want to start another world war, like in the Cold War. They didn't want that to actually start. So the only way they could stop it from going on and pointing the finger at only one person and put the stuff to the side and hide it for 75 years. So we today, the people that was actually involved will be completely gone. They'll be completely gone. They'll be dead and everything else. This is the reason why they hide all this evidence, because they know that who was behind the assassination was the KGB. There's a lot of evidence out there that they're not going to talk about. And it's in the files, it's in the records. And when you start piecing all this together, you have KGB behind everything, because KGB took over after Hitler, basically. Okay, so everything revolves around the KGB of being behind assassination. They had the motive to do it, okay, because they was trying to stop Kennedy from talking to Cuba and Castro. Okay, so they had to take this in consideration when you're doing an investigation, doing research. And like the people I point out, Mr. Zapruder, Ruth Paine and them, you got to look at them, okay? Because there's a lot of questions that they did not answer to. They're walking around and they act like, nothing really happened, okay? But there's a lot of flags going up. Like I sit there and I pointed out, here's Ruth Paine had all these rifles and car cannon rifle, revolver, and Oswald's other rifle in her garage for months, and nothing sparked up about that. Okay, Mr. Zapruder only buy one camera, a brand new camera, 2 weeks before the assassination, and buy one roll of film. Okay, but then after the assassination, he stops filming. He takes the film, he sells it on that same day, basically, and then he gives that money that he got from the film to his secretary, which was covering his ears when the shots were being fired from behind him, and he didn't drop down or nothing else like everybody else. I mean, the Newmans was already hitting the ground. The Newman family, they was hitting the ground covering over their children, but Mr. Zapruder was standing there and just kept on continue filming while these shots are being fired from behind him. Okay, that's why a lot of people sit there when they point out this. This is why I said there ain't no assassins was in the Daltex building. Because if there was one shot fired from the Daltex building, anywhere from that Daltex building, that leads them right back to Mr. Zapruder. And that puts Mr. Zapruder in harm's way right there then. So the only way they could do it is they place him in a county records building, have them dress up like cops, Oswald over here, and then have these two guys down here so he could be by the train yard dressed as tramps. We have a worker here. We have two guys dressed up like police officers in this building here. Then we have the two tramps down here by the railway yard and say they was just riding a train. Okay, it was very well planned. When you start putting them all in pieces and you start looking at this, just like Oswald worked at Texas School Book Depository. Okay, over here we have the county criminal court building, county records building. They're going to be dressed up as cops is in there. They're not going to have nobody over the Daltex building because that's where Mr. Zapruder worked at, and that's where he run his business out of. You place two guys down here, they're going to dress up like bums or tramps, because they could say, well, they was riding this train over here somewhere. So see, they had the locations marked out in advance. The route was already placed in the newspaper 2 weeks before JFK came to Dallas, Texas. Okay, it was already planned out, very well planned out. Just like I said, when we look at the assassination itself, Okay, these distraction shots. That's the key fact. The distraction shots wasn't taken until after the shots were fired down here. This will indicate that it was a military hit, but not our military, but by the KGB military. Okay, so it's a military hit. It's a military plan. Everything was planned out when it came to JFK assassination. And the KGB is the only one that's smart enough, okay, because it's like Russia and the United States are right here, okay, as being smart enough to pull this kind of stuff off. Anybody else is down here, and there's going to be a big file up on one thing or another because they don't very well plan their strategies. Russia and the United States always well plan their strategies before they take action, okay. So I wanted to make this video to let you know that actually the KGB was behind the assassination. I wanted to point out some facts. Now, am I blaming Mr. Zapruder or Ruth Paine? No, I'm not. But there's evidence there that shows that they can't answer about it. Now, we know Mr. Zapruder passed away some years ago, so we know we're not going to get no answers from there, okay, or what he was doing on the side. But Ruth Paine is still alive. Can she answer these questions? Can she say that, that she was never curious to go in there and look in her garage and see if there was a rifle in there from when General Walker was supposed to have been assassinated? Or, other questions that can be answered. There is a lot of open doors here. Okay, we have to look at this. There's a lot of open doors here. And there's a lot of questions that has no answers to, because no one sat down and took the time to go over detail for detail. Because if they would have pushed it, and that's another thing too, if they would have pushed these questions, if they would have pushed this issue time and time again, okay, if they would have kept on pushing this, what would happen? Everybody would know then the KGB was behind the assassination. So instead of pushing the issues, instead of asking all these questions, instead of putting them through the ringer to break them, they go ahead and says, well, Oswald done it. He took 3 shots and that was it. Do the cover up, because if the people knows, and people would have, say, let's go to war. Okay, so to stop the war from happening, let's blame Oswald did it. Let's cover up the rest of the stuff. We know who done it, but we're going to cover this up for 75 years. Let's place it away. Mrs. Kennedy signed for it. Robert Kennedy signed for it, saying put the stuff away for 75 years. Don't let anybody say it, because that's why they put the order out. Okay, that's what I've been saying all this time. KGB was actually behind the assassination. I go into more details, like I said, I go into more details, and where you can fully understand it, and I go through step by step, and I point out all these facts, okay, and I point out, just like the story of Oswald and stuff like that is in here as well, okay. All of my books are basically in this one book here, all the evidence here, all the shots, all the images, more images of Governor Connolly's outfit that he had on that day, and maps, and where Oswald and them got the rifles and everything else like that. It's all in this book here, Evidence of a Conspiracy, which is on Kindle and on Amazon. But I wanted to make this video to let you know that the people that actually behind the assassination was the KGB, and I have a lot of evidence in this book to shows that the KGB was behind it, and people that read this book fully understands now, because like I said, I go more detail for detail inside of this book than I am going to put in a video, because a video, you got time limits, and it's not like a full documentary, which I'm going to try to work on and make one. But the KGB was behind the assassination of JFK. I'm making this video to let you know that now. Don't forget to hit the like button. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to tell your friends about us. If you're looking for a good book to go over and understand fully about the JFK assassination, I'm not trying to push my book on anybody, but if you want to know the truth, it's all in here. Evidence of Conspiracy. You'll see all the evidence I've uncovered from the films, images, and other documents. Just like in here, people was making money off the JFK assassination. I also have in this book, right here, you can see Western Union documents that was sent to to Jack Ruby, where people want to send him money. They even have Western Union telegrams for his wife, Oswald's wife, Marina, where people were sending her money and felt sorry for her and the kids and everything else. You'll find it all in this book here. Again, don't forget to hit the like button. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to tell your friends about us. The JFK assassination was, the people behind the JFK assassination was the KGB. Thank you and have a nice night.